All right, so hopefully you all see the welcome screen. Again, this is the second webinar meeting of the Automotive Technology PLC group. Today is December 20th, 2011. And we'd just like to give you a quick overview of our agenda for the day. We'll start out with welcome and some introductions. I'd like to go through some suggestions and tips for the PLC webinars, how to make the most of webinars and your experience with the PLC. Then we will hear from Sam Morocco. He has some integration lessons that he is willing to share with us. So we'll take a look at those. Following that, we'll have feedback and discussion. Hopefully, we'll be able to open up the microphones and allow you to speak freely and ask questions and share ideas related to integration of math and reading into the curriculum. And then finally, at the end of the session, I'll pull up the PDE SAS website and give you a tour of the parts of that we're using, and also answer any questions that you might have about posting your documents and where to access information on that. So this is Jennifer Grams. I am joined from the Meter Consulting Group. I'm joined by Michelle Aber-Giffen today, and then we also, as I mentioned, have Sam Morocco online, who will be sharing some lessons and some ideas with us momentarily. So with that, what I'd like to start out with is some questions for you. In our last webinar, we heard from Tracy Stetler, who a literacy coach from Reading-Muhlenberg, who shared with us some ideas and some strategies of ways to incorporate literacy and reading into the classroom. And I'd like for you to use the raise your hand button on your control panel to give us a sense of which of these strategies, and I'm going to click through them, which of the strategies that Tracy presented have you tried out in your classroom, either before Tracy spoke about them or since you learned about them a couple weeks ago. So let's start out with a reading program. Please click on the raise your hand tool if you have any sort of a reading program in your school or in your classroom. I believe the one that Tracy described was one where students were able to read materials that were either related to the discipline or other, and I think there was a rewards system. And Sam, if you want to fill in any details, please feel free to speak up. How many of you on the call today have some sort of a reading program? Looks like Thomas Buff. Andy Watt, great. And Ben, good. Great, okay, that sounds good. The next one, question mark cards. Have any of you used those? That was a card that was distributed to students, had some question prompts on it. And I have a graphic of that here in a minute, just to refresh your memory. Not too many on that. How about Cornell Notes, or the 2-column notes format? Raise your hand if that's something you use or if you've tried out in your classroom. Great, looks like quite a few. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4 hands raised. Okay. Cubing. Remember what this was from Tracy's presentation? I'll show you a note on that in a moment. Have any of you tried out the cubing strategy? 1, 2, looks like 2. Okay. Word walls. This is a great way to bring in vocabulary and have it very present. Word walls are, in some schools that we've visited, in the case studies we've seen sort of a virtual word wall where that information is on the screensavers of the computers. That's another great way. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 of you have had some experience with word walls. Process writing, having students write out the steps or the stages in a process. 1, 2, 3, okay. handful. Dictionary.com, was that something new, or had you used that before? Okay, and then the last one, word of the day, kind of goes along with word walls. How many of you do a word of the day? I see a couple of hands raised. 1, 2, 3, 3 or 4. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad to see and hear that those are some strategies that you either had already been using or maybe learned about based on the webinar and have had a chance to try out. And also it seems like there's a variety. We have 10 of you participating on our call today, and on any given strategy it looked like there were about 4 or 5 folks who were trying it out, so that's interesting. And if any of you have a comment or any questions or anything about those reading strategies that you'd like to share, please go ahead and raise your hand. And right now we have your microphones muted just to minimize the background noise, but if you do have something you'd like to share about any of those, please go ahead and raise your hand now, and I'll gladly unmute your microphone. Any success stories? Okay, it looks like Thomas Buff. I'm going to unmute your microphone. Go ahead, please.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi, good, thanks. Remind us, please, what school you're from.
Okay, this is Tom Buff. I'm from Schuylkill Technology Center.
Great.
And I use Word of the Day, but the story I wanted to share is I visited Monroe County Technical Institute yesterday, and we walked around and saw some of the shops, and I was very impressed that every shop that they had, they were using word walls, and the way they were using them in the automotive shops was amazing. And I'm gonna use exactly what they did, the way they did it. I just wanted to throw an attaboy out to them. They really was a nice job.
That sounds good. Could you describe for us just a bit how they were using it in their shops?
Yeah, like let's say the auto body teacher had the word wall up, and he had all kind of questions on it concerning different kind of paints. Okay. And there was the whole, it looked like there was about eight different words they had to learn, concerning the characteristics of paint. And it really was amazing, because it was pretty higher level stuff, but he said the kids all liked it, and and it was really colorful on the wall, so it was really amazing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have anyone from Monroe on the call today you'd like to add to that? Okay. Well, Tom, thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have an example? Or let's see, Ben. Go ahead, please, Ben. Your microphone is unmuted. Please go ahead. Okay. Ben, unfortunately, we can't hear you. Could you check to see if you have your microphone turned on your computer? It looks like you're using your computer. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Unfortunately, we're not able to hear Ben, so I'm going to see if maybe Michelle can. Ben, if you could enter a note into the questions box, maybe Michelle can help with some troubleshooting, see if we can get your audio activated there. Bobby Bard, I'm going to unmute you. Did you have a comment or a question? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, on the word walls, something else that we add to them, matter of fact, Franklin County Career and Tech in Chambersburg, before we get going too far.
Okay, thank you.
Off of the NOCTI test, there's a lot of different words that are on that NOCTI test that the students don't understand, such as compare and contrast. If you don't know what those words mean, you can't answer the questions properly. Mm-hmm. So we've actually, of course, going through the 339, started putting, along with our regular word walls to our towards the automotive, we also do things like that, to where those words are up, and they also have the definitions up, and they actually get tested on those also. But that's something else that we've added into it to try to help with that part of the program.
Great. That's a fantastic suggestion. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. All right, great. Well, if anyone has any thoughts as we go forward, please let us know. We're very interested to always hear your ideas and suggestions on that. Oh, here's the graphic on cubing that I mentioned, just to refresh our memories, and the question mark cards. So these slides are from Tracy's presentation, and we have posted her presentation as well as the recording of the session on the SAS website. And at the end of today's meeting, when I show that to you, I'll show you how to find that on there if there's something that you'd like to refer back to, or if you missed that session and would like to listen in on it. Okay, just a couple thoughts here related to participating in webinars with this PLC group, and some suggestions on ways to really get the most out of it. These are some ideas that we put together based on our experience with the PLC webinars last year, and there's 6 of them. First off, if you get a chance, think about the topic of the webinar before the webinar. And for the most part, we're locking in the topics and if we have any guest presenters and whatnot. We should have that pretty much lined up by the beginning of January. So we'll be able to let you know in advance what the particular topic is going to be for the upcoming webinars. And one way that we publicize that is through the monthly PLC newsletter, which hopefully you all have been receiving from us via email. We also share that information with you in the email that we send with the registration link. Another suggestion, and these are all pretty self-explanatory, but we do ask that you plan to arrive a few minutes before the start of the webinar. We all know that technology is great when it's working, but there are occasionally things that go haywire. So that is a recommendation to try to sign on a few minutes in advance. And then also, we are tracking attendance, so if you are sharing a connection with a colleague, and that's great, we're perfectly happy about that, but please send us either an email to follow up or enter a note into the question box or the chat box, just so that we can be sure to give you all credit for participating, because only the person's name who actually logs in shows up on our control panel. We ask that you be an active participant. You can, during a presentation, raise your hand or enter questions or comments in the question box in the chat box. We monitor those throughout, and to the extent that we can open up the microphones and have a free form discussion, we want to try to do that as well. Seems like we've been able to work out a lot of our audio bugs, but sometimes there is still some feedback. Also, don't be shy about asking questions or speaking up, because a lot of times the people listening in also want or have the same thought or question. And speaking of that, looks like Stan has raised his hand, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone. Stan, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, I do. First of all, Roy Morgan and I are here together from Career Institute.
Okay.
Should our chat box be on our screen right now?
Do you see the control panel should be on the sort of upper right hand corner?
Yep, there's an orange, a green, a blue, and a hand.
An orange, a green, a blue, and a hand.
You have an orange arrow, and then you have...
Okay. So if you click on that orange arrow, does it expand or shrink the control panel?
Oh, yeah, expanded. Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Okay, very good. Others might have had a question about that too. Thank you for asking. So the control panel and the way to raise the hand should appear in your upper right-hand corner of your screen as sort of the default setting, and you can either expand or shrink it by clicking on the red arrow. Okay, great. So continuing on. 2 more of these. Conference call etiquette. As we mentioned, we do have microphones muted for the most part throughout the main presentation for background noise purposes, but when we are able to, we'll definitely unmute. And we do ask that when you speak up that you tell us your name and your institution or your school, where you're located, just so we can get to know voices and everyone will know where sort of where the ideas are coming from. And then finally, in terms of the webinar response form, this is a form that we have distributed to you, and it's also posted on the SAS website. And this is a requirement for any participants who are seeking Act 48 credit for participating on the webinars. And the other value to these is that it gives Michelle and I feedback on your thoughts and responses to the webinars, and also any questions or follow-up items that you might want us to look into in terms of bringing in resources or additional topics for webinars. So this is the form. I'm sure you've all seen it, but I'd just like to make one additional comment about it, and that's that for each of the 3 sections, there are some guidelines about the amount of content that we're looking for on this form. And I will share with you that PDE reviewed the forms that were submitted by all the groups, not just this group, but by all the groups for the first couple rounds of webinars. And for some of them, they asked us to go back and ask the attendees to give us more detail or a richer feedback on those. So please do put some thought into it, in particular the personal response, and thinking about how the information might be something that you can incorporate into your setting. So for some of you, we might be coming back and asking you to give us a little bit more information on a previous form. All right, so with that, those were sort of my housekeeping issues. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions related to any of those, or any sort of webinar related questions at this point? All right, I don't see anyone's hands raised. So what we'd like to do now is to introduce some colleagues sharing and learning. And as I mentioned earlier, we're very appreciative that Sam Maraca from Reading Muhlenberg Career and Technology Center has agreed to share some of his lessons with us. But before he does that, I'd just like to sort of put down some ground rules related to this. And in future webinars, we'll be asking all of you at different points to share information. So we just like to make sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of what we're all looking for here. And that's to ask questions, explore, maybe challenge, give ideas of how lessons or materials or resources can be improved. But none of us are coming out and saying that we're experts on this, and we don't want to be judgmental. This is an opportunity for you and for us to share these ideas, and we want to make sure that everyone's comfortable doing that. Here are a few ideas of questions to mull over, to ask yourself while you're listening to the presentations, and then also some ideas of questions you might want to ask as follow-up to the person who's presenting. I'll just give you a minute to look over those. And then finally, once Sam has had a chance to share with us his materials, we'd like to open up the floor for some feedback and discussion. And this is the model that we'd like to use, is to begin with what we call warm feedback. So what seems to be working well, what types of maybe similar ideas have you used in your setting. Then any cool feedback. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on ways that the materials could be improved? What could be better about them? Then finally, raising the temperature. So how to turn something that may be cool into a warmer lesson. Are there any alternative ways that this could be done, or do you have any specific suggestions for improvement? And then finally, do you have questions about what has been shared? Either those that I showed you previously, or any questions that you might have. All right, so thanks for your attention to that. At this point, I'll go ahead and let Sam take the mic, and I actually have his information here on my PowerPoint presentation, and this whole presentation will get posted to the SAS website along with the recording of this webinar. So you'll have that to refer back to. But Sam, go ahead and you can just start talking and give me a prompt when you want me to forward a slide. I started out, as you see, with your PowerPoint on metric conversion.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sounds good.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Alrighty. Yeah, this is a PowerPoint that I put together maybe a little over a year ago, and doing metric conversions with the students. Actually worked with Lisa Hughes on this one, and it's something that's important in my program area. So if you want to advance the slide,
Okay.
you can talk through it there. We I wanted to come up with an easier way than what was being used in my textbook and workbook. And Lisa had this idea of using steps that she had seen before. So I thought it would work good in my shop, and it actually has. And it's kind of easy to read, and allows them to go from meter on down to millimeter, or go from millimeter on up to meter. And on the one side there was an arrow to convert by going up, and then the other one what to convert by going down. One's dividing, one's multiplying, and the students seem to get that pretty easy. And of course, this was a handout that went along with some stuff. I did some of the book work with them first, but then this was like a follow-up, and the kids that were struggling with it in the workbook actually ended up being able to understand it better with this, and then going back into their workbook and actually correcting stuff they had wrong.
Sam, this is Jennifer. May I interrupt you for a moment?
Sure.
So I'm curious, at what point in the school year would you typically present this lesson, and then refresh our memories as to which grade levels you have in your program, and do you use this for all of them?
Well, this normally would be presented. This is around chapter 10, so this is this is chapter 10 in my book. It's probably before the holidays. Actually, I would say I hit this around Thanksgiving with my level ones. But when I do this, most of the times there'll be a level 2 there also. I'll go back over it with some other levels, and this guy here is just more like a guideline where I'll put practice problems on the board, and I kind of hit every group a little bit, but the concentration here would be level 1.
Okay, thank you.
Well, 10th graders. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. We have a level 1 is typically a 10th grader. A level 2 is typically an 11th grader, and level 3 is typically a senior.
Okay. Would you like me to go on to the next slide?
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just another reinforcement of the ladder, where I do that example with them. 5 millimeters equals how many meters, and you get the nice order of operation there, and some kids can take that and just read it and not even really need my help. Others, I'll try and reinforce the steps when they don't see it, and you usually can tell the ones that are struggling with it. And you work through this one problem using the ladder process. So that works usually pretty good. Color, there's changing color there, so their eyes can go to different things. That's not just like a flat page, which I like, and then have the arrows with the decimals moving. I think you're covering a nice visual there too, so that's good for the visual learner.
Right.
Some of the people that are doing it with their heads buried into the paper, hopefully I can support the auditory learner.
Do you use this on a smartboard, or do you have a projector? How is your room set up?
I have a smartboard, and I also will I'll post this usually too on a bulletin board that's near my smartboard, so it's up there, and the kids get copies as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I I use my smortboard all the time. Some of the practice stuff that we have, if it's in PowerPoint, usually what I'll do is I'll copy and paste it out of PowerPoint into notebook software, or I'm sorry, I'll copy and paste it into like a PDF. So it's easier to draw on a PDF and not have things jump around and fly around on you. That's usually how I do it in my classroom.
Okay. Then I think you have another example on this next slide, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, you can
Okay.
advance. Yeah, there's just another problem using the same ladder technique, where the kids actually, you work through that with them, and once again you're hoping that they fully understand it. They're not on their own yet here. You're kind of still going through it with them, and you're at this point you're really you're understanding and capturing who's getting it, who's not, and you're kind of strolling around a little bit. There's some kids that just get it right away. So if you wanted to slide, I'll go to the next slide. Then at that point, what I do is have this slide where I'll have the kids refer back to the ladder technique and try to take the answer on the right and put it to the question on the left, and seeing how they do with that. Usually what I'll do, I'll have maybe somebody come up and write it on the board or something like that, or if it's one person, maybe multiple. I like to do that in my classroom as well too. That's when you really start to tell who's not getting it. And a lot of times the class will take care of itself in a way where the ones that get it will jump up over and help the kids that don't get it. But they still have their papers there in front of them that they're trying to use to figure it out. And once they go through that, I also have this guy, and I actually put this up on the screen at the PLC kickoff at Penn State, and it was a student of mine last year that had a way of remembering the movement of the decimal by remembering King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk, and this is a metric system in a little bit of a deeper in more detail, where they actually, in their workbooks, they do go into the hecto and the deca, and I'll usually have practice problems, and what I'll do is I'll have that in a PDF like I sent it to you, and I'll write on the one side like something like 6 millimeters equals, and I'll leave the space to the equal sign open and put down how many millimeters. And then we kind of, I'll have like a sheet that I'll have examples that I'll have already figured out, and I want the kids to, some kids get real good at remembering the decimal movement, some use the ladder. It takes on a different life here. This doesn't come out usually on the first lesson, maybe the second one if I'm reviewing again or something like that. But they kind of remember that little story thing. Mm-hmm. So I'll use this when we go through precision measuring, but this guy also comes back out when I go through DVOMs, when I go into whether it's introduction to a DVOM with my one session, or even when I'm doing work with my seniors. I'm always trying to review, and this guy's real nice to pull up real fast. Kind of keep this one on my desktop,
right?
Especially doing electrical.
Okay, well, thank you. So I'm curious, for the other folks on the call today, could you raise your hand if you find that metric conversions is an area where your students struggle and need some additional help? Looks, let's see, almost everybody. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, at least half the group. Do any of you have? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put hands down. And do any of you? This is a little bit breaking out of the format that I suggested a few minutes ago. But since this is fresh in our minds, do any of you have any questions for Sam about this lesson, or about how he uses it, or thinking about how you might adapt it for your situation? Please, if you do, please go ahead and raise your hand. Nope. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So, Sam, is there anything else that you wanted to share about this particular lesson? I know you have a literacy one as well.
Mm-hmm. No, just to, I guess, to speak about it being an add-on. I still use my, material, my book materials, my textbooks, and my workbooks. But having something that's created like this from scratch, when I work with my math coach, and I'm lucky enough to have one, I really think that I come from the student's point of view when I make stuff up with Lisa, and I like things to be simple because I know that they understand it better. And sometimes the material that we get in the books just kind of like it's thrown at them, and it is difficult sometimes to work through some of this stuff. So like a lot of stuff that I create like this is thought of through a student's mind, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like with the ladder effect, and then even something as simple as this, they seem to respond better to that stuff.
Right. How many, and so I'm curious, that was actually one of the thoughts that I had, that you have a great resource in Lisa as your math coach. How many folks on the call today have a math coach or someone who is a resource like that at their schools? Andy, Benjamin, Bobby, Josh, Sam, Stan. Okay. Byron. Looks like about half of you or so. Okay. That's great. All right. Thank you. So shall we move on to the literacy materials?
Sure.
Okay. So if you could describe what this is that we're looking at and how you use it and how it was developed.
Okay. Well, this guy's was actually new. I just made this one up last week. I'm as far as myself, I'm a little ahead of the curve with for myself. I think against myself, I'm a little more ahead of the curve with math, and I'm only starting to now flow into literacy. And it's, I think from a school standpoint, math came first as well. So I guess that probably is why it's working that way for me. But I've taken a liking to Cornell 2-column notes, and as mentioned before, I think even Tracy's presentation she did at the last webinar had one of my Cornell notes in there. I'm having success with them, so I'm sticking with them, and that even goes for the fact that my seniors are taking a liking to them as well. And I was a little worried about that. You kind of get the snickers and the like, oh, why do we got to do this? We didn't do it before. But even they're catching on to it, and the kids are using these for great study guides. I try to keep them basic so that they're not too confusing. And I was going over alignments, and this was not. This was after it was already introduced. After we already did some work, there was some stuff I wanted to go into detail a little bit. That was at the bottom of that page, steering axis inclination. I had felt that the kids were good with the material above that, but I still wanted to do a small review. I wanted to go over something called yaw. It was actually like, it was almost like a review, but an introduction as well too. And I wanted to go over steering axis inclination, which was number 5, and I wanted to introduce yaw. So I had some handouts for them. I had a couple handouts for them as well. Maybe I should have included it, but they were small, maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs on each. I wanted them, and I gave this to them and told them I would get back to them in about 20 minutes. I was working with another level. I wanted them to fill that out, and they're getting used to just putting maybe like a sentence down in each box. I try to guide them, like when you see the stuff on the left, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What I see on the right, what you'll see on the right box is where what I'm trying to guide them. Like what isn't, like when I'm looking at the top, what is important about a pre-alignment inspection? Why do we do it? I think they have to realize that it's something that's necessary. And so I'm kind of like steering them as well. That goes for me coming from the field. I know why they need to have it, and also I'm aware of what they need to know for NOCTI and things like that. So That worked well. This one worked out really well. When we got to the steering axis inclination and got to the yaw, it was the classroom environment was real good. The kids had a lot of questions. I had some examples of yaw. Ended up pulling something up on YouTube. And then at the end, I had them just do a summary. On this one here, I was only asking for 3 to 5 sentences. I usually don't go above 5 sentences. Sometimes I'll go 4 to 5. Sometimes I go 3 to 5. I don't always have, like, you know, I've had some of these notes where they were the same notes, but I changed the question depending on the group. So that was, you know, they're easy to do. They're quick to make, and it helps me steer them to where I want to go. You know, this was, like I mentioned before, this was all after the after all the book work was done. This was even after some of the job sheets were completed for alignment, and you know, it's actually neat to see other students kind of like I have other levels that were picking up on what they were doing. I have level 1s and level 3s in the afternoon, and you know, just when they're sitting around, I see kids picking these up and reading them, and saying, they'll ask me about it. And it's neat. They're nice. They're clean. They're to the point. So I like them. They're working well for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Do any of our participants on the call today have questions about this this document or using the strategy? Do any of you do something similar in your classrooms that you'd like to share?
This guy was actually pretty good because you know, it was an independent project. Some kids did very well with it. Some kids were helping other kids with it as far as the senior class. So you know, I like that too. It made them read a little bit, made them write a little bit. So that's getting done in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's been tougher of a road with the seniors because they didn't have the literacy pushed out them the way I'm doing it with the 10th and 11th graders.
Right.
Hi, Sam. This is Michelle from Meter Consulting. Just kind of following up on what you just said. With Cornell Notes or, you know, maybe any of the other graphic organizers you may use, how do you go about kind of teaching students how to use them, you know, and to make sure that not only are they doing it and kind of filling in this guide, but doing it well and kind of meeting your expectations? Like, you know, how frequently are you modeling how to fill in something like this, like the 2-column notes? And then how long before they're kind of, you know, you can just hand them this paper with directions and they kind of can run with it themselves?
It's getting to the point where I can just hand them out. I had to get myself in this mode weeks ago. I knew that I had to embrace this and start some literacy strategies. I like the Cornell Notes because they're very easy. Mm-hmm. I'm starting cubing more, where you have the questions. Now, cubing doesn't work with all the material that you have. I tend to have it on, I'll do the cubing on a piece of paper. The question mark card is something I'm phasing in at this moment. I actually received a question mark card from a student from his home school, and I actually just shared it with Tracy yesterday, and I think when you look at the question mark card, they're a little bit in-depth questions, and I really want to go with something easier and work through and scaffold them up to that other card. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of like I'm in it. I'm phasing myself into it as well as I'm phasing the students into it, and these Cornell Notes, these 2-column notes are working well for me. I have different variations of them too. They're not all double column like that, but I like using them a lot. The kids like them too, and you know, they almost all have some kind of summary at the end, so they get to write a little bit. I'm actually getting really, I shouldn't say, I'm getting closer with the connection I have with the student's writing ability. I guess that's where I wanted to go with that. Like I'm really connecting to a student's writing ability just by seeing those couple of sentences. Mm-hmm. Like I can tell students that are struggling formulating sentences, and I can tell the students that are doing very well with it. So when I'm looking back on it now over the last couple of weeks, I like that I chose something easy, and I'm ready to go into something a little more complicated. And I think the students will be able to handle it.
Mm-hmm. So kind of the idea of starting simple, kind of simplifying it, and then you can build complexity as you go along.
That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
phasing them in. Yep. It's for me and for them as well.
Right.
I had journals, and journals was a little tougher for me to keep them up to date, and I knew something else had to be done. You know, our administration wants us to have some type of a little bit of writing every day, and this is satisfying that little. It's almost like a little journal entry at the end, except the kids don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Great,
I found
thank
some
you.
simple. I give them a couple points. I've been putting some of these are worth 10 points, some of them are worth 15. I usually put that on the paper, how many points it's worth. So I kind of hold that on to them a little bit as well, and I count that as a writing assignment. I probably do maybe 3 of these a week with each group.
Okay.
So I'm kind of building a little bit of a bank now.
Yeah, well, that's nice for them, too, to have that collection of summaries and, you know, notes to review and such.
It does help. They actually are. I like the way the testing is going. It's actually, you know, I'm happy because I'm getting across to them what I feel is very important, and they're giving it back to me, and I can see that in their tests, and that's a nice thing too.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Great. Thank you. So at this point, I'd like to just open up the floor to see if anyone else has any feedback or questions, ideas on similar strategies or materials that they've used in their classroom. Feel free to raise your hand. I'd be happy to unmute your microphones. Nothing? We have a quiet group. Well, that must mean that they like what they've seen, and they're all going to use it this afternoon. All right. Well, Sam, thank you again so much for being our first volunteer to share a lesson, and we really appreciate the information, and I'm sure that'll be something that folks will be able to refer back to and get some additional ideas. So thank you.
Sure.
So for all of our participants today, in terms of what's next, for our next meeting, which is scheduled for January 24th at 9:30 a.m. It was hard to type 2012 on there. Had to keep correcting myself. We would like to start focusing on some of the NOCD skill areas that you all identified as areas for improvement. We've spent some time on integration and math and literacy strategies, so now we'd like to shift our focus a bit and focus on the actual skill areas. And just to refresh your memory, the 3 areas that emerged from the discussion at the kickoff event were engine performance, electrical and electronic systems, and customer relations and shop procedures. So what we'd like to do at our next webinar is to do a similar type of working session meeting where we have a couple of you share lessons or materials that you have for those skill areas, and then have a discussion and questions and feedback session. And we'd like to reiterate that we're not expecting that anyone is necessarily an expert on this area, or that even that the lesson or the idea, the materials that you have are perfect. We'd like to foster a discussion and also give opportunities to get feedback if you want to share a lesson that you're working on developing or that you're looking for feedback on and want to see if anyone has any ideas of how they might approach it. We would definitely like to include those as well. So what we'll ask you to do in terms of next steps is to, for those of you who are pursuing Act 48 credit for the webinars, is to complete and post your webinar response forms. Typically we ask for these to be done within 5 school days of the webinar, but with the holiday break coming up, we'll we'll give an extension on that and ask that they be completed and posted by January 6th. And then, so that's the first action item. And then secondly is prior to January 18th, which is about a week before our next webinar meeting, we'd ask that you send at least one lesson or material work in progress related to one of those three NOCTI skill areas to us via email. And this is something that we'll go through them and try to organize them in a way that makes sense. But when you send us those materials, please identify which of the skill areas it pertains to, and then let us know if you feel that the lesson is complete and ready to use in the classroom, or if it's still in development and you're more looking for feedback and suggestions related to how to tweak it or how to improve it. We'll send you these action items in our follow-up email. So with that, I'd like to just see if there are any thoughts or questions. Anyone has any success stories or any new information about what's going on in the field that they'd like to share, just sort of an open forum before I do an overview or review of the SAS website. If anyone does, please raise your hand. Any questions or comments? Okay. Well, I don't see any, so I will go ahead then and switch out of presentation mode, if my computer will cooperate, and pull up the PDE SAS website. Hopefully you're all familiar with this. You've at least seen it and been able to access it at some point. But the website address is pdesas.org. And what I'll begin by doing is logging in, which is located at the upper right-hand corner. You can click on Login. If you haven't yet created a SAS account, this is where you can do it by clicking on Join Now. My browser has saved my login and password, so it pops up for me automatically every time, which is nice. So I'll just click on Submit, and that will log me into the portal. And it basically looks the same, except that you see at the top it says Welcome Jennifer. So it should have your name up there. So there's a lot of information and resources on this website, and we encourage you to take a look around, see what might be out there that is of use or interest to you. There are also other communities that you might be interested in joining, or if you're interested in starting a particular community, that's something that I believe you're able to do as well. But in terms of our community site for our PLC, to access that, I'm going to click on Teacher Tools, which is on the top right-hand corner. And here's where I see what my options are. I'm going to click on My Communities, which is right there in the center. And what that will bring up is the list of all the various communities that I belong to. And you'll see all the different PLC groups listed here. If you have quite a few groups that you belong to, you may need to scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on View All of My Communities. If yours isn't showing and you know you belong, that's most likely why it's not showing, because you have a lot. But I will go ahead and click on the Automotive Technology PLC, and this is what the page looks like. Could I see a show of hands of how many of you have been able to get this far and actually log in and see the community site for our PLC group? Ben, Jeff, Josh. Okay. Only a couple of you. Okay. Well, the other thing that I'll just mention, and actually I'll take a step back here, is We have opened up the communities, so you no longer need to receive an invitation from us to join them. So if you haven't already, once you've created your account, if you haven't already joined the community, what you'll want to do is to, back on this community navigator page, in this box that says keyword search. This is how you can locate our community. And what I would suggest typing in there in terms of keywords are something like PDE, automotive technology. I think that will bring, and then enter. And there you'll see the communities that are related to those keywords. And our group happens to be the first one on the list. And then if you're not already a member, you'll see on the right-hand side of that a button that says Join. And so you'll just click on that, and that should put you into the membership for that group. So that's how you get connected. So I'm going to just go ahead and go back to the page, and I'll give you a quick overview of what's on there. So on the community site, in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see members, and these are all the different folks who participate in the PLC and have joined the group. You can upload a picture to your profile. You can also, if you want to send an email to someone, you can click on their name, and it will bring up a little email box that you can do that. Right below the list of the members is a list of the upcoming webinars and the dates and times. And what we try to do here is to put the registration information for the meetings here, so that if you, instead of looking through all your emails, you can come here and access that information. We have a forum on sort of the center of the page, and this is where we might post questions for discussions, or if you have particular things that you'd like to get some feedback or input on, you're certainly welcome to request a new forum, and we can get that posted. We right now just have a question up there about student learning style assessments, wondering if any of you currently use those, and if you do, if you would share your experience with those. So if you would like to comment on that, what you would do is click on the title, Student Learning Style Assessments, then click on New Topic, and here's where you'll be able to enter. I'm not sure if that box is showing up, but that's the process you would follow, and you'd be able to enter your comments or thoughts on that particular topic. Then finally, at the bottom of this page is what's called the Digital Content Repository, and that's quite a mouthful. But basically what this is an area where we can share information and resources. So just to give you an overview of the different folders that are in this area. The first one, PLC Information and Materials. This is where we post any of our newsletters, instructions, housekeeping type materials in this folder. Resources, literacy integration. These are some resources that were shared with us by our two presenters, our two literacy reading coaches. Tracy Stetler presented to your group, and then Karen Free from Upper Bucks presented for one of our other sessions. So she also has shared with us some materials. So here's where you can see, and also if you have anything to share, you can post those resources for literacy. We have a similar folder for math integration, which doesn't have anything in it currently, but we'll be sure to add some materials there. Next to last, the webinar presentations and recordings. This is where, as I mentioned earlier, we will be posting the PowerPoint presentations as well as the recordings of the webinars. So if you miss a webinar and want to listen to it, or if there's something that you just want a refresher on or want to listen to again, please look here for those materials. We typically get the the presentations posted within about 2 to 3 days of the meeting, sort of depending on technical glitches and whatnot. But look there within a couple of days after the meeting, and it should be there. And then finally, this last area is the webinar response form inbox. And this is where, for those of you who are submitting the webinar response forms, this is where we'll ask that you post them. And you'll see that there are 5, I believe, or 6. Looks like we have the template, and then we have 5 posted in here. These are forms that we received from you, and Michelle and I went ahead and posted them. But what I'll do right now, and this will be the last couple minutes, and then I'll let you get on with your afternoon, is I'll actually just walk you through the process of posting these, so that you can see what it looks like, and hopefully you can try it and have some success with that. But certainly if you don't, you can email it to us and we'll get it posted. So to post your webinar response form, or really to post any resources that you might want to share, it's the same process. You click on this button that says Manage Content, and it will open up a window that says Update Community Content. And actually, I'm wondering, Michelle, are you able to see the window that opens up? Michelle and Sam? Can you?
I am.
You are? Okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure. Sometimes with the webinar, when you open up a window, it doesn't only shows what was below it. So, okay, thank you, Sam. All right, so this, again, just shows you all the different files. To find a document that, say, you have saved on your desktop, you click on My ePortfolio, which the ePortfolio is really just a sort of a holding place for your documents on the SAS website. The next thing, you click on this arrow that says Upload File, and this will give you a basically a way to search or find your information where it's stored on your computer. This is very similar to attaching a document to an email when you're looking for something that you have stored. So I will just pick out a sample document. I'll find it by clicking on Browse. And here, actually, the folder on my desktop that I happen to have open is the webinar response forms for this group. So I'll click on Byron's, just for an example. Click Open, and here you'll see that document, whatever it was that you had selected, the name of it should appear in this box. If it does, or if it does, you're ready to go. If not, you can click on the X that says Remove, do that process again, and find it. So since this is the one that we want, I'll click on Upload, and that document will then be added to your ePortfolio. And you'll notice that I have a lot of documents here because I've been uploading various presentations and whatnot to the websites. But you'll just find that document that you uploaded. I think it's right here. I'm going to click on it, the webinar response form. Scroll down to where it says Select a Divider. And if you click on that down arrow, you'll see the different folders that are in the digital content repository, and that's where you can select where you would like that document to be uploaded. I will select the inbox, click Add, and it is now posted. And what I'm expecting to see is that we'll have 2, right? So what I see here is that we actually have 2 response forms now from Byron posted, the one that I had posted previously, as well as the one that we just did here together. So it's a lot of steps, I know. Once you've successfully been able to upload documents a couple of times, it's not as daunting as it may seem. So we really hope that you'll be able to try this and see if it might work for you, and also then to begin sharing resources, especially as we get into the skill areas. Our goal is to have this website, this SAS website, be the initial place where all automotive technology instructors can go to and access and share materials and really start building that that library and those resources. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an introduction to the SAS website. If you do have questions or you continue to have difficulty accessing any of it, please let us know. We'll do our best to walk you through it. If you have more technical related questions, that's probably something that the SAS help desk, or if you have a technology coordinator at your school, probably something that they would need to get involved in. But if it's just a matter of where do I find something or how do I post a document, we're certainly happy to walk you through that. So that concludes the information that we wanted to share with you today. Do we have, looks like we're 2 minutes over our hour time frame. Do we have any final thoughts or questions or comments from anyone on the call today? Okay, I don't see any notes or hands raised. So with that, we'll thank you for your participation. Hope that you all have a wonderful holiday, and we'll look forward to meeting with you again in January. Please let us know which of those skill areas you'd like to share or get some feedback on, and send those materials to us via email. We'll send a follow-up email to let you know when the materials from today's meeting have been posted to the SAS website, and also just to follow up with those action items. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Sam, for sharing your information.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great afternoon.